Hi there, my name is Sage Jankowitz. I am a local broker focused on Somerville and Cambridge, Massachusetts. I have a specialty working with investors. In fact, I was the number one buy sell leader for multifamilies in Somerville in 2025. I had 8 transactions by myself and I beat out a number of top teams that had multiple agents. So in this video today, I kind of wanted to just talk a little bit about some things that kind of bug me a little bit when it comes to Somerville multifamily sales and some mistakes I see sellers make in choosing a seller's agent for their multifamily sale. So the first thing that happens quite a bit, and it happens, I'd say, the vast majority of time when it comes to multifamily sales in Somerville, is that often sellers pick agents that are what I would call residential agents. And what I mean by this is the vast majority of real estate agents, not just in Somerville, but across the country, honestly, are focused strictly and for the most part on residential sales, meaning they're focused on condos and they're focused on single families. And so I see a lot of people hire someone because they're, quote unquote, a top agent, or maybe there's someone that they just really feel like they know and trust. But the reality is they have either no experience in multifamily sales or very limited experience, or in rare cases, they have some experience in multifamily sales, but no experience in rentals. I am very, very different. As I mentioned, I did 8 buy-sell transactions when it comes to multifamilies in just Somerville alone in 2025. I also average between 70 and 100 rentals a year in addition. And what I've come to realize is that multifamilies, they're their own thing. They're very, very different from condo sales and single family sales. You are often dealing with tenants. You are often dealing with what is the rental rate for these units as is if I do nothing. Someone who's in residential sales won't understand that. You're often dealing with, well, if I make these upgrades to the units, if I add these things, will I increase the rental value rate? Is there a way that I can rework the space, which could have an increase in rental value? All of these things have a dramatic increase in sales price because at the end of the day, a typical multifamily buyer in Somerville is looking at very, very different things than a residential buyer. So I think it's critical whether you pick me or someone else to be your seller's agent, that you pick someone that actually specializes in multifamily sales. And that brings me to point number 2. You also need to pick someone who is local. And so in addition to doing a lot of multifamily sales, I also help a lot of multifamily buyers. And every year I usually get about 3 or 4 really, really awesome deals for my clients. And typically the absolute best deals I get each year are because the agent who is representing that seller for the multifamily property is not in Somerville. Oftentimes they're 30, 45, 60 minutes plus away. And those agents really miss the mark on pricing. We swoop in and we quickly lock up the property and close the deal. And I feel bad oftentimes for these sellers because they don't realize it, but they're often leaving between $50,000 and $200,000 plus on the table, simply because their agent isn't local and doesn't understand the nuances of the market. And so to just give you a very, very simple example for Somerville multifamilies, you can have a property that is in Winter Hill. If it's on one side of Broadway on the Gilman Square side, and then you have another property that's on the Foss Park side of Winter Hill, could be same exact property in every other way, the Foss Park side is going to sell for a lot less. These kind of nuances an agent is likely not going to catch if they are not local, because what do most agents do? They go on MLS, they look at the data and see, well, it's pretty close to your property, it's fine. Well, it has a huge impact. And that can come in the form of overpricing the property it sits. And that's another opportunity as a buyer's agent for me to get a lowball offer for my client accepted. Or they underprice it because they think a property isn't worth that much and they're misreading the market. The third thing is around preparation. What I have found is the vast, vast majority of sellers agents go into a multifamily property and they say, it's an investment, do nothing, list the property, put it on MLS and let's close this thing. The reality is there's a lot of multifamilies where it actually does make sense to make updates. But the thing is, most agents, not only do they not even think about making updates, but then they don't really know what updates to make because again, they're putting on the cap of a residential list agent and thinking about a residential buyer. It's important to remember that buyers of multifamily properties are looking at your property from a very, very different angle. They're trying to understand what is the market rent as is? What kind of updates can I make to these properties to increase the value? Can I add amenities? Can I adjust the layout? What is happening on the ground in this area? Is the renter pool improving? In other words, are there renters coming into this market who maybe make more money than they did 5 years ago because of some change? For example, a new Green Line T stop. All of these things dramatically increase what your property can sell for, and how we talk about these things, how we position these things really matters. Um, so, if you're interested in talking more about your multifamily property in Somerville, whether you're seriously considering it or just kind of tossing it around, give me a call. My number is 617 833 7457, or shoot me an email, sage@cambridgesage.com.